order. I'd like to have the Town of St. John Redevelopment Commission, the meeting. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Beth?
Gerald Swets is absent. Christian Jorgensen.
Present.
Mike Bovat.
Here.
Wayne Pondinas.
Present.
Ann Oster.
Present.
Bill Manasopoulos is absent. Joe Svetnoff.
Here.
And Beth Hernandez, present.
Item 4, consider approval of the August 28th, 2024 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Number 5, new business. I don't think we have any. Item 6, financial matters. A, accounts payable voucher dated September 25th, 2024, representing payment for payroll, supplies, services, and equipment rendered to the town of St. John at the combined total of $75,745.24. Do I have a motion to pay the voucher?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So motion carries 4-0. Item 7, old business. We do not have any old business. Item 8, reports and correspondences. Any reports or correspondences?
9.
None.
Item 9, public comment.
Anybody on the list?
I didn't grab the list. Excuse me.
I'll grab it, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that, Jackie. And then item 10, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Yep.
Call to order for the Town of St. John Town Council meeting. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Roll call, Beth?
Gerald Swets is absent. Christian Jorgensen.
Present.
Mike Bovat.
Here.
Wayne Pondinas.
Present.
Ann Oster.
Present.
Bill Manasopoulos is absent. Joe Svetnoff.
Here.
And Beth Hernandez, present.
Thank you, Beth. Item 4, public comment. Nobody signed up for public comment. Did anybody care to comment? Anyone in the public? Thank you. Item 5, approval of minutes for the August 28th, 2024 Town Council minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I have
I second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries 4-0. Item 6, public hearing on the 2025 municipal budget for Civil Town, Sanitary District, and Water District. Proofs of publication.
Mr. President, at this time, the proofs of publication have been reviewed, and they are in order, and the public hearing is properly proceeded.
Thank you, Joe. I'd like to say at this time that I'd like to commend everyone in the town that works for the town in your efforts to work toward this budget, the planning, the hours and the efforts that have been put in. Believe me, it is greatly appreciated by this council. We don't take it lightly, and we thank you for your effort. I'm going to ask if the department heads could comment to their budget, and like to start with Beth.
Sure. Well, I'm also happy to report that this year's budget season went extremely well. We held several different budget meetings that included all departments. We do have a fairly new staff, so we focused and put an emphasis on training this year so far as how to read and understand appropriation reports, fund reports, and revenue reports. And this directly correlates with the preparation of what we're going to present this night, which is a balanced budget. We were able to work together as a team to create the 2025 civil, sanitary, and water budgets, and so I thank all the department heads as well for being a part of the process and your input, and just the fact that we were able to work together so well this year. It's very much appreciated. As far as the clerk treasurer's budget is concerned, the final budget amount remained identical to 2024. My staff, we will be receiving the 3% raises across the board, but what we were able to do was reduce some of our legal and consulting expenses now that the council and my office shares services. We share Joe and we share Baker Tilly, so that those duplication of services no longer occurs. So we were able to take some of that reserve and use it elsewhere. We are not adding any new staff members, and I do not have any larger capital expenses to report for this year. I think Bill may be on his way in, so maybe he could talk at the end.
Sure.
And we can move on to the next department head unless there are any questions for me.
Any questions?
No, good job.
That's excellent. Thank you, Beth. If I could have Ashley from Building and Planning. Ashley?
Yes, sir. I will be touching on the building planning as well as stormwater. So there's minimal changes to the 2025 building and planning budget. The only increases that we're seeing is engineering to continue utilizing our engineering firm to review the plan commission plans and subdivisions as they come in, and then an increase to legal fees since we are now adding that unsafe legal attorney onto our docket with the addition of the unsafe hearing board and the unsafe building. So that's where that increase comes in. We are also able to, using a split between building and planning and stormwater, take our code enforcement officer from a part-time position to a full-time position, whereas in addition to helping enforce the codes of the town, he will help inspect stormwater. For stormwater, with the adoption of the stormwater user fee, we now have a few different projects for capital improvement planned for stormwater in 2045. We have a culvert replacement planned for Oswald Drive, multiple drainage improvement projects. One's at 95th and Northcott, one is at Spring Lake Road, and one at Fellberg and Hedwig. Additionally, there are various other stormwater projects that we have planned for 2025. We have two capital purchases that we have planned for 2025. One is a stormwater vehicle for the stormwater and public improvements inspector, who currently He's borrowing a truck from the building and planning, so we have plans to get him his own vehicle for next year. And then we are sharing the cost for a backhoe for the town, and that will be a three-way cost. Are there any questions for me?
I think that's excellent. Thank you, Ashley.
Welcome.
Moving along to our departments, our police chief, Steve Flores. Steve, if you could speak.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank Beth and Billy and all the other department heads working through this process. It was pretty smooth. I mean, we worked together well. We all met last week and kind of go over everything and what to expect tonight and going over our budget. So it was nice working with everybody, so thank you on that. Our budget pretty much is the same as last year. We were able to make a couple savings, some overtime and a couple other line items. But across the board, it's pretty much the same as last year. We do have a couple capital projects. We are getting a couple squad cars to replace some of the older ones in the fleet. And another big one that we're doing is we're able to take our body cameras now to a cloud storage. Before, we were storing it on a server here, and we weren't able to use the system to its capacity. So now that we're able to move it to a cloud storage, we're able to use the system like it's meant to be used. So that's a big plus for us with our body cameras, because we were having issues converting it over from our server into their system and then getting it to work like it should. So this should help out tremendously. But for the most part, like I said, everything's pretty much the same, going through our budget and other than those two projects, but we were able to save a little bit as well too, so.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Steve.
Sure.
Very good. Any questions, anyone?
I did have a question with the Dodge cars. I saw Maryville Police Chief spoke about having to buy a whole new
Right.
fleet. Are we seeing any of that?
No, and while our Chargers that we had almost every one of them, the camshafts went bad on them, which is a separate issue. And that was like a $4,000 repair on each of those. But the issues they're having now with those Durangos is the oil cooler. Knock on wood, I'm hoping we're not jinxing us. We do have a few of those Durangos. I think we got like 3 or 4 of them, but we haven't had either one of those issues with those yet, hopefully not.
Just to speak out to that Durango issue, Maryville has had 7 out of 8 fail in terms of constantly being repaired or out of service. And the state police have had out of 280 so far that have failed. We're trying to get the Attorney General to step up, pay attention, and take on this matter because it involves not only Maryville and the state, but also probably many counties and municipalities throughout the state. So we're still awaiting some action from the Attorney General's office.
So needless to say, we're not buying Dodges, so.
I was just gonna say, Chief, I'm like, can we stick with Explorers?
Yes,
I mean, everybody wants an SUV, right?
yeah, we're going with the Ford Explorers, so.
Yeah.
Which I think you've already approved this year, so that it will be ready to take possession next year.
Yeah.
Well, I am a Chevy man, but no. That's fine.
You're also a Packers fan, too.
I definitely approve the Explorer.
I like them.
Very good. And, I did have one comment then, like you said with the cloud storage opposed to the servers, is that kind of common throughout other departments, throughout, Lake County, or is that something new, or?
As far as storing it on a cloud server, most departments do.
They do
store it
that?
on a cloud, yeah.
Okay. so-
Yeah. And we were able to, with the size of the server we had, we were able to store it on there, but it didn't work well with the system.
Okay.
It just didn't speak with each other well. So now that it's all on their cloud, everything's in their system, it just makes it so much easier, and there's more features that the system has that we can use now that we have that. And one of them is redacting. So if somebody requests a video, we have to redact certain information or certain, like juveniles, if they're in that video, we have to redact that. So being when it was on our server, we had to use a separate system to where now that it's on their cloud storage, we could do it right then and there, right in their system, and it gives us the video that we need. So it's just way more user-friendly.
Do they have a special contract with law enforcement as far as firewalls? And
They do, yes.
Yeah, I figured
Because
they
that was
would.
one of my big concerns too, but yes, they do. I
And
mean,
now-
it's a good point.
And then everything that was on our servers can be transferred or already has been over to the cloud?
It can be, yes,
So that'll free up our space.
correct.
That's great. Thank you again, Steve.
You're welcome.
I'm going to bypass and go to our streets and parks.
Shane, I have Shane on Microsoft Office.
Okay, Shane is on the Microsoft Office. He's there?
Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to go to our fire department. Shane?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of everybody else. As far as the budget process, it went very smooth. A lot of hard work with Beth and Billy and all the other department heads. I think it went very smooth, and I want to thank everybody for that. One thing as far as the capital project that we're going to have next year is the new fire engine will be in at the end of the 2025 season. That's been on order for the last couple of years. That will replace one of our 30-year-old fire engines, so it is much needed. The other thing too, this will be for more of 2026, but I just wanted to thank the town council for the commitment letter for the new ambulance for 2026. This will finish updating the fleet for the ambulances, and that ambulance will replace our 2010 ambulance. It will keep us up with the latest technology and also will be dependable to serve the residents of St. John. Next thing I have, which is pretty big, two things with our full-time firefighter paramedics. Next year will be the first year that the full-time firefighters will have a more salary style pay system. It's been forever with the way their pay cycles work, with their 24, 48-hour shifts. They would have a large check and then a small check and like a medium check, so they never really had a consistent check. They never knew exactly what they were going to make. With all the hard work with Billy and Beth and stuff like that, we were able to come up with more of a system to where it's more like a salary, so they know what they're making, and this will be able to help them budget and support their families better. So I definitely want to thank everybody for that. And the last thing I have is we were able to increase the full-time firefighters and the paramedics base salary as their certified salary. We increased it almost 5,000. This is what their pension base is based off of. This is pretty huge. This will help retain our firefighters and medics and make us a little bit more competitive with our neighboring fire departments. And that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions? You know, I think we're good, Shane, and thank you for that competent remark of everything you just mentioned. We appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Moving into streets and parks, Gabe?
Is there a button up here? Hello, everybody. So first off, we're going to start with our staff. Staff-wise, we plan to add one additional laborer, bringing our in-the-field staff to a total of 18. We also plan to continue with our seasonal help program for both snow plowing and summer help, as this year's implementation of this program proved to be a big success. We plan to add 2 additional summer help spots to help service our 26 parks and 129 miles of road. Some of our capital equipment purchase include a skid steer with 2 attachments used for things like excavation and various landscape projects, and a roadside sidearm attachment. Some of our larger projects include repaving and repairing various bike trails throughout town. On a side note, we plan to make this an annual budget item moving forward. Amenity improvements at Heartland Park and Civic Park, a Prairie West parking lot expansion, and a repave project. Town property seal coating at various locations. We applied for the CDBG grant for the Timber Lane Park Improvement Project, which includes a new playground equipment, play surface, and a bike trail renovation. We plan to pilot a product called Liquid Road, which gives longevity to roads that aren't quite ready for a full repaving. The goal is to extend the life of the road by maintaining its infrastructure before requiring a complete tear-out. Last but not least, the town council applied for $3 million in CCMG road improvements, which are planned for next year. Different projects do come up throughout the year and will be added to our list. This is just a quick rundown of some of the bigger projects we plan to tackle in 2025. Are there any questions?
I just have a quick question. So has there always been extra help in the wintertime, like seasonal help?
No, we started that this year. We started that. That's to give our workforce its time to rest and not overwork them, not put them past their hours legally. This helps us to game plan our storms. Each one is individual that comes up. We won't use them for every storm, but for the ones that we need help, we will have that in our back pocket to use.
The summer works out really well. Just, yeah, I like seeing all those kids out there. Sure.
I think we're good. Any other questions or comments? I think that's great, Gabe. Really thankful for the efforts of the Streets and Parks Department. And, I think it's trending and we're doing positive things. And I know it's a lot of work and we appreciate the effort.
It's a team effort.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Moving on to Bob, our water and wastewater.
I just want to thank everyone and thank Beth and everyone for their help for this, preparing the budgets. Gabe, excellent job representing Public Works, good job. Also, water utility-wise, we did a lot, as you guys know, we did a lot of projects this year. So next year, we're going to focus on wells 8 and 9 and get those up and running and into our water system. We made modifications to the plants this year. Now it's time to get these wells built and into the water system. Also, we're going to continue on smaller water main projects throughout the year. We'll go through those, Bill, myself, and we'll discuss which ones we want to attack. But we budgeted for that this year as well. Sanitary-wise, capital improvement-wise, we are probably going to just focus on the Schererville expansion and the biosolid building and that route.
I know wells 8 and 9, that's a big thing.
Oh,
That's
yes.
huge.
Yes, we'd love to get that done this upcoming summer, fall.
They should be up and running next year, right?
That's the goal.
Did I know that the water man was going to make a comment?
And then our usage with Schererville, that's been drastically cut.
Our usage with Schererville has gone down drastically. A total of what I counted was, this is our lowest year since I know. We're under 300,000 total expenses to Schererville. Usually we're at 500, 600, 700,000. So we're saving money there. The filter change-out media paid for itself already, so we're doing well.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
The 2 media changes,
Absolutely.
game changers.
Game changers.
Yeah, so that we increased our production from, 1,600 to 1,800, we go up to 2,200?
As of right now, we're pumping more out of the Gates treatment plant. We have increased over 1.5 million gallons when necessary, so which that eliminates. Schererville was giving us approximately 1.4 million to 1.5. We are now covering that on our own. Once you add wells 8 and 9 into that, you can add another 1.5 to 2 million gallons. We are heading in the right direction.
And there is no
Great
water
things.
shortage.
There is no water shortage.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Are the new water main projects planned for next year? Or are those going to be bid out, or are those smaller projects?
Probably both. Both. We'll do smaller ones to connect ones that we've done this year that won't go over the 150 threshold. So either way, probably both.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
And I'd just like to comment before I turn things over to Billy for some remarks. But on behalf of the town council, to our department heads and to our clerk treasurer, Beth Hernandez, Steve, Gabe, Shane, Bob, Ashley, I mean, all of you, I mean, it's a tall order. And on behalf of the taxpayers of the town of St. John, we appreciate what you have done. One thing I heard from everybody, Billy, as they were talking, I know you were a big part of doing our budget, but there was a resounding theme of working together. And I think Beth was the first one to mention it, but you all kind of touched on it, that it was smooth, everybody worked together, and I'm grateful for that. Grateful that we could work together and get this accomplished. Like I said, in the economy, and if you look at other municipalities in close proximity, this is an outstanding achievement, and I thank you for that. Billy, any remarks or comments you would like to make?
Well, first, sorry for being late. Traffic was a little bit heavier than I thought. I don't know exactly what everyone else went over prior to me getting here, but Bob's presentation just shows a little bit of what his department's doing, and whatever they presented in those 2 or 3 minutes is just a small part of what they're doing. These departments are running full force, just blazing ahead. And for me, the first time having done a budget in the state of Indiana it was pretty seamless. A couple of bumps, but nothing that isn't expected. And thank you to everyone who took part.
You're welcome. And also back just to what you said, Beth, how that, just by combining, some of our resources, we're able to save money. Little things, but it's paying big dividends already. So we are on the budget, and this is a public hearing, but before we get to the public, I would like to move for opening remarks from our financial advisors, Baker Tilly, and we have here Eric Walsh and Amber Nielsen. Eric, if you could comment, please.
Good evening, Eric Walsh, Principal with Baker Tilly, Amber Nielsen, Manager, worked with the Town of St. John Beth's office for many years. This year, our firm was asked to review the budget as well as capital planning from not only a cash flow standpoint, but then from a sustainability standpoint. Tonight, I'd like to go through a handful of slides to show you high level the impacts of what each of your department heads talked about tonight. So a couple of themes that you heard as they spoke to their budgets, but also you're going to see in the charts and graphs as we get to them. One, fiscal responsibility, obviously emphasizing the importance to maintain balanced budgets and fiscal sustainability, not just in 2025, the budget we're talking about tonight, but also providing flexibility into future years. And I'll show you that as we get into some graphical analysis. Resource allocation. A balanced budget obviously allows you to not only sustain the operations of the town, that's the day-to-day thing, salaries, wages, supplies, maintenance, all of that, but it also, once you have a balanced budget operationally, allows you to start investing back into your infrastructure. Obviously a big word, buzzword, not just in Indiana, but nationally, infrastructure and the need to rehab and improve it. This budget allows for that. You heard several department heads start talking about it. But it also sets the table for 26, 27, and beyond for additional infrastructure investment. And then finally, public trust and stability. Beth hit on this. I think Bill talked about it. Several meetings with department heads just going through not only the budget process, but understanding everything from when you create your budget to appropriations throughout the year to maintaining every single month over month accuracy in the reporting, in terms of what you budgeted versus spent. And then it culminates in tonight with a public presentation. But really this is, I would say, months of work that starts back way before June 30th when you start pulling your mid-year financials. A couple other things that for the council that are a little bit different, but things that you're going to keep kind of in your hip pocket. One, maximum levy growth factor for 2025 is 4%. Unknown what's going to change in 26 and beyond. But 4% is a cap that is across the state of Indiana. Okay, historically, max levy growth factor, and for the public, that is property tax revenue generated. is based on a 6-year look back at Indiana economic indicators. So it's a fancy way of saying if the economy is doing well, typically you see that number be a little bit higher. When you're in a recessionary period, you see that number be a little bit lower, but it's on a 6-year look back, so it doesn't, move dramatically from year to year. The last 2 years, the state has capped that growth at 4%. Without that cap, the growth factor would have been 5% plus the last 2 years. So understand that you're already hindered a little bit by how many additional dollars you're getting to work with in 2025. I'm going to talk about that at the end because I think you want to keep that in mind in 26 and going forward. Nothing's been done at the State House yet, but as they get back in session, there could be some changes as well that are going to affect you in future years. And then secondly, historically, you've seen pretty good uptick in your income taxes, local income taxes, what I'm going to refer to as LIT. You actually saw about a 12% increase from 2023 to 2024. That's a significant increase in your revenue stream. The certifications for this don't come out until later in the year. Your budget's already done by the time you know what you're getting for income taxes in 2025. But the preliminary estimates from the DLGF, Department of Local Government Finance, are that that's going to be relatively flat for St. John next year. I will caveat, DLGF's typically conservative in their estimates. Typically, you're a little bit higher than what they estimate, but this budget does not assume you're getting increases in that LIT rate in 2025. Okay, so that's another revenue that's not going up to help support your operations. The third piece that I'll talk about is the second bullet point here, then I'll come back to the first, but the third piece is historically, or at least the last 3 years, St. John has been the recipient of what we call a 3-year excess growth factor. So what that means is St. John's assessed value, so the value of the homes, businesses, personal property, et cetera, in the town was growing significantly faster than the state averages. So you were able to appeal, or the town was able to appeal to the state and say, hey, we're growing so fast, we need additional revenue to sustain our operations. And you can see to the right, it's not insignificant numbers. It's 6 figures each of the last 3 years that you've been getting from this. In 2025, you are just below the threshold to be eligible for that appeal. So this will be the first year in a few years that you actually won't be appealing to get additional revenues for your growth, for your growing population, okay? That doesn't mean St. John's not growing. You've been growing in 2024, you grew 8%. I mean, that's a very healthy growth factor. And if you look at the 2 years before that, it was double digits. So this is based on the last 3 historical years, has nothing to do with 2025. The main issue is even though St. John's still growing very well, the rest of the state has started to catch up and assess value growth, mainly because of trending. If all of you have paid any attention to assessed values in the state of Indiana, that's as property values go up and are getting sold for more, they try to keep the assessed values kind of going in that linear line. You don't need me to tell you what's been happening in the last few years with home sale values. That's been putting upward pressure on assessed values. So the state of Indiana's growth has been significantly higher than it's been historically. And for you to be eligible for that appeal that I talked about, you have to be at least 2% higher than the state average. You guys are at 1.7% for the last 3 years is why you're not eligible. So all 3 of those factors I give to you because of the revenue side that you're dealing with has some downward pressure on it to balance your budget, okay? And the last point that I'll make is at the top here, and Beth hit on this, but I think it's just very important that when you're dealing with some revenue side issues that you really don't control, I mean, you can't go out and change your income taxes. You can't go out and change what the state is going to do for max levy increases. You really don't control those sides. It's very important what Bill and Beth were doing with the department heads of educating them on these issues, of saying this is why we got to tighten our belt on our budget side and make sure we come in balanced. Okay? Next slide. So this is the levy side, so the revenue side, property tax, and it breaks it down by all of your funds on the left-hand side. What I want you to focus on is really the far right bottom number. In 2024, you got about you will get about $9.7 million in property tax revenue. So this is not the income tax, this is not locally generated revenues, this is property taxes, that max levy number I talked about earlier. Several of your funds get part of that max levy. On the next slide in 2025, we're estimating what that number will go to is approximately 10.1. So that's roughly that 4% increase. It's about $400,000 of additional revenue from last year to this year that you'll be getting from property taxes. The income taxes I talked about is staying relatively stable, relatively stagnant. So this is really the additional revenue you have to deal with. Sounds like a lot at $400,000, but when you're talking about a town the size of yours and operationally, a 4% increase in your revenue side is not a whole lot to work with. Next slide. I know this is very small, but I'll tell you the story, and for the public that probably can't see this up on the screen, the left-hand side is showing where we estimate cash-wise each of your main operating funds of the town. So this is not every town fund that you have out there. I mean, Beth probably has 80-plus funds that you deal with. But these are the 15 or so major funds that you operate out of. This is 90% plus of your operations. The left-hand column, estimated cash balance, is where those funds will all start, or we estimate they'll start 2025. The green column are the revenues that we're estimating. That's both the property taxes we just looked at, the income taxes I talked about earlier, as well as locally generated revenues. Those are things like building permits, interest income, fines, fees, so on and so forth. The red column are your disbursements. That's the budgets each of your department heads have talked about and what Beth and Bill have presented to you tonight in the formal budget document. Ending cash balance, the next column to the right, that's where we estimate you will end 2025. And then probably the most important column, the net cash flow. If you see a positive number there, that means that is a balanced budget, or we actually estimate you are going to put money in the bank in 2025 after you pay all of your bills. And then the far right column, what we call cash reserves, this is taking how much money do we estimate you'll have at the end of 2025 after this budget is executed, and then we divide that by your entire year's budget for that fund. So for instance, when you see in your general fund a 40% in that top right number, that means we estimate you will have you could approximately operate almost 5 months, a little over 5 months of the year without another dollar coming in the bank, okay? The state would tell you a 10% or more number for your operating reserve is sufficient. I'll tell you right now, the number you are shooting for, kind of the gold standard, is 50%. Okay. Why is 50% a gold standard? Because what is your largest revenue source? It's property taxes. How do you get property taxes? You only get them twice a year, every 6 months. So if you have 50% sitting in the bank, you can go a half a year without getting another dollar as you're waiting on your property taxes to come in. St. John doesn't have this issue, and you guys are in fiscally in good shape. You probably see or hear or read about communities that are doing tax anticipation warrants or short-term borrowings because they're trying to cash flow themselves until they get to their June or December property tax distribution. That's not the place you want to be. That's not the place you are going to be. Make sense?
Yes.
Anything you take from my long-winded presentation is the second column from the right, net cash flow. If you go down to the bottom, if you spend every dollar in your budget and revenues come in where we're estimating they are, you'll add to the bottom line, so to speak, for the town, $1.6 million. So not only is it a balanced budget, meaning revenues and expenditures are equal, it's a budget that you're actually going to save some additional dollars for future years. You only have 2 funds in this entire budget that's being presented where we estimate you'll have some negative cash flows. One is the public safety lit fund. That's where you can pay fire or police only out of. Those are the only, has to be related to public safety, those expenditures. That does have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, it's a police salary that was.
This police and fire are both paid out of the public safety Lowit fund. You do see that negative cash flow we ended up shifting. Usually the general fund pays 90% of police and fire, and then public safety 10%. This year we shifted it to 87.5% and then 12.5% coming out of public safety Lowit.
And you may ask the question, well, okay, Beth, why did we do that if you see we're going to have a 70,000 negative cash flow in public safety lit,
Right.
but general's going to have a positive 173,000? There's 2 reasons we recommended this and worked through this with Beth. One, if you look at that operating balance in public safety lit, even with the $70,000 negative, you're still going to be at almost a 90% operating balance. You have almost a full year of costs sitting in that account. And then 2 is your most flexible fund in the entire town is your general fund.
Right.
You can use it for any legal purpose of the town, so you can pay anything out of it. You want more money in your general fund because it's more flexible. Public safety lit can only go for police and fire. It's a much more restricted fund. So this isn't sustainable for a decade doing it this way, but for a year or two, it's better to get more money into your general fund, spend down some of those cash reserves and public safety lit that's a more restricted fund.
And I think with the implementation of the residential TIFs in 2026, when we start to see the benefit of that, that should offset any negative cash flow we're seeing in public safety Lowit. So like Eric said, this isn't a long-term game plan, it's a short-term game plan.
Yep.
It'll get us there.
Exactly. And then the other one that you'd see is the cumulative sewer fund with about a $36,000 negative cash flow. That's one, again, I think it was last year or the year before, I think it was last year, Beth, where it was decided to actually shift some levy from the general fund to the cumulative sewer fund. As you can see, the cumulative sewer fund has 136% even after this cash flow, cash reserve. You have more than enough money in that fund
Right.
for anything you're planning to spend from it. So again, we advise the city, and Beth has agreed to present with you guys tonight, don't take money out of your most flexible fund and give it to a cumulative sewer fund that's restricted for sewer. Put that money back into your general fund where it should have been in the first place going forward. Now, again, is it sustainable in perpetuity to have that negative $36,000 negative cash flow? No, but it's sustainable for a number of years, and it's primarily capital driven. So I would say we'll just measure that as we go forward in future budgets. If you have some capital needs in cumulative sewer, you can always shift some back, but you're perfectly in great shape now.
And it's important to note with the stormwater fee that's been implemented, there's less pressure on the cum sewer fund to complete those stormwater projects that Ashley had discussed. So it didn't really make sense last year or this year to shift any levy from the general fund to cum sewer at all. We did last year for cum fire, which made sense then and still makes sense because of the ambulance purchase and the fire truck purchase. So you do want to build your cash balance there, but cum sewer, it never made sense.
Yeah, there's a very good distinction Beth just made that I want to make sure you guys caught. Cumulative fire, when you increase that fund, you're actually, that money, you're not taking it away from the other funds. You're not taking it away from the other fire funds. When you increase your cum sewer, not you, when cum sewer was increased last year, you actually were taking money away from the general fund in that case. And we're just switching it back. Last thing I'll make on this is, even with that positive cash flow, balanced budget, adding to your bottom line, again, this assumes you spend every dollar that's in the budget. You don't spend every dollar that's in the budget. We actually anticipate you're going to do better than what we're showing you here on the screen. Next slide. I just have a few more slides and I'll wrap it up. This is total selected funds of the town. So again, I'm actually excluding stormwater, water, and sanitary out of this. So I'm really only focusing on the civil side funds and the major operating funds. What you're really interested in tonight is the 2025 column, which you'll see is 2 from the right. And this is what you'll notice is an increase in cash reserves of about the $1 million or so that affect these funds, okay? So you'll notice that pretty good trends historically through 23. If the whole 24 budget ends up being spent as is, we anticipate you're going to see a dip if that whole budget is spent this year, and then we start building it back up into 2025. If you remember my discussion about cash reserves, that red line in the middle, that is that 50%. So this is for the whole town-wide. Very healthy. You're above the 50%, that gold standard that I talked about, but we want to make sure and get back on track in 2025 of having the balanced budget or adding at least to our bottom line. Now, we have shown you 26 and 27 in here, just carrying out some of these trends. I'll talk at the end about, this is a guide rail for you all. We're actually working with Bill, department heads, and Beth right now on some of the capital planning in those future years to give you a very detailed report of, are we going to be able to afford everything that is being proposed in those future years capital-wise, okay? So we'll update these numbers when we get that, but based on current trends, we anticipate you're going to build a little bit even into the future. Next slide. Now I'm going to focus on a few specific funds, especially your larger funds. This is the general fund. This you start to see kind of right away, that larger budget in 2024. And then steadying it back in 2025, actually a little bit of a positive cash flow, and then can we carry that out into the future? Again, I'll come back to that when we get the final capital planning done. This one, the red line, you were at it back in 21, 22, you're right at that 50%. You can see we've dipped now down below that. We're going to have to add some cash if you want to get back up to that level here in the future years. I will add, though, I'm not overly concerned. I mean, you're well above that 15% level, the gray line at the bottom. There's nothing that I'm saying here, major red flag, you need to change something. As long as you take the approach you took this year, let's balance the budget, let's make it sustainable, you're going to be fine in your general fund. Next slide. Motor vehicle highway, this is a fund restricted primarily for what it sounds like, streets and highway uses and payroll and refurbishment or investment into your infrastructure. This one, once again, very healthy. We are adding to it in 2025, positive cash flow. A little bit out in 26 and 27. Again, we're going to have to finalize that capital plan before we get there. We may see a little bit of a downtick that's primarily driven by some additional capital needs that may be out there for paving, et cetera. That's not to be decided tonight. We're just kind of giving you a sneak peek of what could be in the future years. Park, that's another one. Used to be above the 50%. You've had some negative trends here historically. We're going to level that off in 2025, balance the budget. And then if we can continue that trend and a couple other changes that Beth and Bill and I have talked about, we think we can start actually building Park back up into the future years in 26 and 27. Public safety lit, that's the one we talked about at the beginning. You can see that negative cash flow in 2025 that Beth talked about, where we shifted about 2.5% from general into public safety lit. Now I'll caveat this, I'm assuming that shift still stays there in 26 and 27. As Beth talked about, as we see some of this development occur from some of the residential TIFs you guys have been doing, start seeing some of those connection fees, et cetera, being generated from that development, so on and so forth. This story is probably going to change because we'll probably be able to shift some of that cost back to the general fund. But again, we're going to put a finer pencil to that as we get out here in the next few months and finalize your capital plan. This is the one fund, though, we got to keep an eye on. And then finally, I'll wrap it all up. Just what recommendations do we have as the financial advisor to the town? One, really just continuing monitoring those expenses. The things that Beth talked about at the beginning, and they sound so simplistic, but doing this for 20 years and working with hundreds of communities around Indiana, making sure department heads fully understand the budget process in Indiana. As Bill said, it's unique, put it that way, when you see the way Indiana does it. And then keeping track of their appropriations. If you start at a balanced budget and you can stay within your appropriations, the year's going to end great. So making sure they understand how to track that every single month in their expenditures. Middle column, continuing to consider the long-term impact on future cash flows. That is one thing that I can't say enough of. Yes, we're here to talk about the 25 budget, but just stopping at the 25 budget is very short-sighted. That's why I put those extra years in there and kind of some of that trend analysis. And as I said, Amber and I are working very closely with Beth, department heads, and Bill right now to really finalize a very detailed multi-year plan that'll show you not only operationally how costs are trending, and if you need additional costs in the future, but then in a detailed capital plan, rolling stock, investment in roads, investment in your infrastructure, can that be afforded and how can that be afforded in these future years? And then finally, just continuing to work through that. I think we're just waiting to really just fine tune some capital planning stuff with Beth, and then we'll probably be ready to get that in front of the council. My last point, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, because it always comes up when we do these presentations. Okay, this is a great budget, it's balanced, everything looks good. What are the risks or what are the things we may be not seeing? I would say the risks for St. John are very similar to all the other communities that we're working with this year. One, it's that 4% levy cap that I talked about at the state level in 25. That's your property tax cap. Will something like that continue into 26, 27? Nothing's been decided yet, but if they do that, that's putting a ceiling on your revenue generation in those years, and we're going to have to account for that. Two, inflationary pressures. Yes, we've seen some of that back down the last few months or last year or so, but you're still looking at inflationary on cost, especially as it relates to personnel cost. And as you see other units or state departments, et cetera, increasing salaries and wages, that just makes it more competitive for everyone else. You have to keep pace with that to maintain your employees a lot of times. So inflationary pressures, continuing to monitor those. And then recurring revenue variables. I talked a lot about things like income tax and property tax and things out of your control. But let's talk about the more local ones. Building permits, interest income, things that you generate here locally, and you've generated very well the last few years. But if there's a downturn in the economy or there's a downturn in development, that's going to directly affect both of those revenue sources for you, okay? We've been fairly conservative in how we've estimated those into your budget. And I would also add that, and this is something I think Beth's probably explained to you all, but should be proud of, you guys have been doing an investment strategy the last several years with your long-term investments and locking in interest rates. You do what's called a rolling investment strategy. So even though we just saw a 50 basis point cut last year in interest rates, you guys have CDs and investments locked in for the next 12, 24 months at those 4.5%, 5% interest rates. So even as we're going to start seeing interest rates probably continue to come down, you've got 2 years sitting here where you're generating revenue at these higher interest points. But if we get back to the 1% and 2% interest levels, I mean, you're generating right now, Beth, $700,000-800,000 in your general fund in interest. Because of good planning, we can count on that for the next 2 years. But eventually, those CDs are going to come due, and then you're going to be whatever the interest rate market is at that point. We'll have to solve that problem. Okay, and then secondarily, the economic development aspect, building permits, all of those things that you guys generate as people build and infrastructure is added. Can we maintain that? I would say the things in your residential TIFs, all the stuff you're doing here locally, you're trying to do what you can to maintain that growth trajectory. And then finally, those are all the risks. How do you mitigate them? It's all the stuff I just said. It's an investment strategy like you're already doing. It's a multi-year plan to forecast out what are you going to need for capital, not just in 25, but 26, 27, 28, and beyond. It's driving economic growth and using the tools you have available, like the residential TIF, not just sitting here and saying, I hope we keep growing like we have. You're trying to entice that growth. And then finally, just council being active, department heads being active, everyone working together to kind of steal your theme from earlier. It's a lot easier to make these plans work when you're not fighting competing interests, and everybody understands the goal at the end of the day is to balance our budget, increase our cash flow, and provide the best service we still can as a town. I know that was a lot, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed it. I think it was a great job, Eric. I was going to ask you a question, but you kind of capped it off by saying that, you know, you guys do have a plan on mitigating some and offsetting some of the expenditures and things that you see. Case in point, like with police and public safety, fire department with lit, and, you know, don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, you know, you're projecting out, but yeah, that's something that we definitely want to bear down on and make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. And just speaking with my peers on the town council, like you also mentioned, we want to be proactive. You know, we don't want to wait and get caught in a trick bag. And, you know, Beth has been a strong influence on being conservative with our spending. So we appreciate that. You know, it keeps us, you know, on point. So again, I think that was a very informative presentation, and I thank you for that. Thank you for working with our department heads also, with Beth and with Billy. Anybody have any comments or questions or anything? All right.
Good job.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
With that, we are going to open the floor to public comment. This is for the budget hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to publicly speak for the budget?
I will say if anyone wants to look at it more thoroughly, it is on our town website. So you can click any of the 3 links to review by line our civil, water, and sanitary district budgets. It's also on social media as well, where you can click the links there. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to, you know, call me, stop in, or send an email, and I will be responsive.
Thank you for that, Beth. And with that, we're going to close the floor for public comment. And again, on behalf of the council, we would like to thank all the department heads for showing up. You actually don't have to stay for the entire meeting, so you're more than welcome to leave if you so desire. We know it's been a long day for all of you, and we appreciate your efforts very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Moving forward, Item 1, motion to consider ordinance 1843A, civil town budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
A second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 2, motion to consider ordinance 1843B, sanitary district budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Number 3, motion to consider ordinance 1843C, water district budget. Do I have a motion?
That's a Wayne motion.
Wayne, that's
I'll
water.
make a motion to pass ordinance 1843C.
Second.
Good one, thank you. I have a motion from Wayne Pondinas. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And I'd just like to comment that unless, Bill, if you wanted to say anything on this, that the,
No, just again, the summary is ordinances are establishing the appropriations and the tax rates for 2025.
all right, thank you for that. Going on to number 7 on our agenda items. A, financial matters of the corporation. Consider a request to purchase. There are a total of 9 requests to purchase and a combined total of $173,740.80 for approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
One correction, 84 cents, if you could just clarify that total amount. Instead of 80 cents, it's 84 cents.
I thought I said 84, no. Is it $173,740.84?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So moved as amended.
Thank you. Item 2, accounts payable voucher, dated September 25th, 2024, representing payment for payroll, supplies, services, and equipment rendered to the town of St. John, in the combined total of $2,672,556.14. Do I have a motion for payment?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Item B, ordinances and resolution. Consider ordinance 1840, an ordinance amending the St. John zoning ordinance and providing for a zoning change for the property development commonly known as Little Rascals in the town of St. John, Lake County, Indiana. On second reading, there was a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. Any comments, Bill, on this one?
No comments, it's just changing it from industrial to a C1.
Okay,
Makes sense. Motion to adopt ordinance 1840 on second reading.
A second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there's none opposed. Motion carries 4-0. Item 2, consider ordinance 1842, an ordinance establishing a schedule of wages, salaries, and benefits for employees, fire and police personnel, and town officials, 2025 salary ordinance. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt ordinance 1842 on first reading.
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. President,
Yes.
with a unanimous vote, I think a motion to adopt is in order.
Well, we discussed this one first, and I think we're gonna move, and we'll have a second reading.
Second reading?
Yeah, on both.
Okay.
All right. We have an option, so.
We're absent.
I was late, I don't know.
And this ordinance is just to establish the compensation and benefits for employees of the town for the year 2025. Thank you for that, Billy. Number 8, town council action. Consider firework agreement for Mad Bomber for Christmas in the park. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second the Mad Bomber.
Very good. I have a motion.
I mean, if
and-
Ann's gonna go ahead and move for it, I mean, she must know the Mad Bomber. He must be harmless.
All right, I have a motion and a second for the Mad Bomber.
Where's that Joe?
You know, we're not supposed
I'm
to
not
say
sure.
that out loud, Bob.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Number 2, consider motion to approve special exception use variance for St. John Professional Office Center, Lot 1, located at 10200 Wicker Avenue, and there was a favorable recommendation from the BZA. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And Billy, where are they moving from? They,
They're on, right now they're located on Kyleman, and they're moving to Wicker Avenue.
okay, and kind of, are they expanding?
Yeah, it's a larger facility.
Makes sense. Number 3, consider motion to release performance surety on behalf of APES Design, Build Smythe, DDS, in the amount of $11,286. Favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. Number 4, consider donation of $500 to Lake Central Schools Education Foundation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in, do I have a motion? I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. And Billy, did we have somebody that maybe wanted to comment at this time on that?
Is she in the crowd? I didn't see her back there. If you'd like to come up. Yeah, Louise.
Absolutely.
So, Louise has been here a couple of times, and finally we give her something to talk about.
If you could just give us your names again.
Yes, I'm Louise Talent, and I'm from 2723 Sycamore Drive in Dyer, Indiana, Lake Central School representative on the foundation. And I am so excited to introduce our administrator. She's our foundation administrator. She's just come on board with us, and we're so excited to have her with us, so I wanted to make sure that she was introduced this evening. Also, we have Cher Cosgrove, who is our secretary, Danielle Spalavaro, who is our vice president, and Kate Pouchon, who is the individual that helps does a lot of our media work and put together a new pamphlet for us. We just want to say thank you so much, and hope after this gathering this evening that we can corral you all and get a picture.
So like that, yes.
You forgot to mention, I think that's Mrs.
Yeah,
Zarnik.
yes, I'm Dawn Zarnik.
Thank you, Wayne.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, her husband's in the audience. Not cool.
Yeah, so, yeah, I just started a few months ago, and we're really excited to help build the foundation, and really happy to be a part of it, and excited since I have kids that have graduated from Lake Central Schools and are still going to be going through Lake Central Schools, so it's very exciting for me, a good, exciting time for the foundation. So thank you so much for your contribution.
And thank you so much, all of you guys. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
You know,
Thank
quickly too, when I taught for Lake Central, I was the recipient of that grant twice. And I can't speak to how much it impacts the classroom. So I think it's fabulous that you guys are donating to this cause.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, ladies, very much. Item 5, consider donation of $500 to Hanover Schools Educational Foundation. Do I have a motion?
Beth didn't make it a grand. So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there is a donation for $500.
I only tease because we're on the line. So Beth and I are in Hanover. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you made a motion that you were going to do your own.
Yeah. I always give. I'm a giver. You all know that.
All right, thank
Easy
you for
man,
that.
Palmer.
Thank you for that, Mr. Vice President Christian.
Levity, levity, levity.
Yeah. And item 9, reports and correspondence. For our town council members, does anybody care to comment or have anything to say? Think you, no, if you want to say something else here.
No, I've certainly said enough, Mr. President,
Okay, thank you.
at least in public.
Okay, I think we're good, and I've said quite a bit tonight, but I'm, again, grateful for the working together of this staff and for the department heads and for the town council and the clerk treasurer's office. I think it's really significant. Thank you for that.
I just have several. Just, our Christmas in the Park is coming up, and I think there's trees. Are the trees available now, Beth?
So we sent an email to previous participants for tree sponsors. I think we've sold 19. We haven't opened it up. In the October water bill, it will be opened up for anybody who wants to participate, but we wanted to let those who previously participated kind of get a little a head start, I guess, because they do sell out quickly. But yes, Christmas in the Park, it's our 20th anniversary of this event, so I think it's going to be a good one. Yeah, so trees are ordered and they're ready to be sponsored, and for any businesses that are looking to sponsor the event, that's available too. I think we've gotten about a handful of those coming in already, so.
And I didn't mean to surpass Halloween, because there's also Boo and.
Boo Bash, yeah.
Lots of stuff on the Parks website. A lot of fun things to do.
A lot of positive things
A lot of
happening.
positive things, for sure, for sure.
Thank you for that, Ann. B, our town manager.
No report at this time.
Billy, I was just going to ask you, I know that there was some.
We're not satisfied with that.
We're going to have a comment from Billy. The last town council meeting, there was an issue with the YouTube video, and Billy, could you speak to that?
So when this administration took over, it created its own YouTube channel. When we were able to get the credentials for the old one, we merged them. There were some meetings that were left over that were at 7 o'clock that were already in the system. So the system was recognizing that as the start time, which was throwing off all the other meetings. So it was a glitch. It's been found, and I didn't receive any phone calls or text messages today, so I'm assuming it's right online.
Okay. Thank you for that. C, our clerk treasurer.
I just wanted to quickly thank town resident Ed Marson. He has donated 3 trees to the Gates Park. He donated 2 autumn blaze maples and 1 red oak. And so it definitely impacts the park. They're beautiful fall colors, and we appreciate his donations.
Thank you for that, Beth. With that, we'll move to item 10, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion, I have a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.